The bar was half empty when Claire Morgan made the comment that would change everything. She didn't whisper it. She never whispered anything. Her voice carried across the polished wood, sharp and certain, landing on the quiet man nursing a ginger ale 3 seats down. "Let's be honest," she said to her friend, loud enough for him to hear. "A guy with a kid? That's just a woman signing up to always come second. What kind of life is that?" Daniel Reed set down his glass slowly, turned toward her with eyes that held no anger, just something deeper, and said 2 words that made the entire room hold its breath. "Want to bet?" If you've ever questioned whether real love could survive real life, stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey reaches. The November air outside carried the first real bite of winter, but inside Murphy's bar, the atmosphere was warm, dim, and safely predictable. Claire Morgan sat at the polished oak counter, her wine glass catching amber light from the overhead fixtures, her attention split between her phone and the conversation she was only half invested in. Across from her, Michelle Chen picked at a basket of fries, recounting the latest disaster from her dating app adventures with the kind of exhausted humor that came from too many bad first dates. "He showed up in cargo shorts," Michelle said, shaking her head. "In October, to a wine bar." Claire laughed, the sound bright and a little too loud for the quiet space. "You're attracting them on purpose at this point. I swear you have a type, and that type is emotionally unavailable men who think flip-flops are business casual." "At least they're available for dates," Michelle shot back. "You haven't gone out with anyone since Marcus, and that was 6 months ago." "Because I learned my lesson." Claire took a sip of her Pinot Noir, letting the bitterness settle on her tongue. "I'm not interested in projects anymore. I want someone who has their life together. Someone who can actually show up." "Good luck finding that." "I'm serious. No more guys who need fixing. No more emotional labor disguised as a relationship." Claire gestured with her glass, her voice gaining momentum the way it always did when she found a thread of conviction to pull. "I want clarity, stability. Someone whose life doesn't require a manual just to understand what I'm walking into." Michelle raised an eyebrow. "So what, a robot?" "No. Just someone who's figured themselves out before they try to figure out a relationship." That was when Claire noticed him. 3 seats down, sitting alone at the bar with a ginger ale and a paperback novel, was a man who looked entirely out of place, not because he didn't belong, but because he seemed unbothered by belonging or not. He wore a dark gray Henley, sleeves pushed to his elbows, and jeans that had seen real wear. His hair was dark, slightly too long, and he had the kind of quiet presence that made people assume he wasn't listening even when he absolutely was. Claire wouldn't have given him a second glance except for the book. It was dog-eared, the cover worn smooth, and he was actually reading it, not scrolling on his phone, not checking the game on the TV above the bar, just reading. In a bar. On a Friday night. "Who reads in a bar?" Claire muttered, half to herself. Michelle followed her gaze. "Maybe he's waiting for someone. Or hiding from someone." The man turned a page, took a slow sip of his drink, and continued reading as if the world around him didn't exist. There was something about the deliberateness of it that irritated Claire in a way she couldn't quite name. It felt performative, like he was trying too hard to seem unbothered. $10 says he's got a whole tragic backstory," Claire said, her voice carrying just a little more than she intended. Michelle grinned. "You're terrible." "I'm observant." The man didn't look up, but something in the set of his shoulders shifted slightly, like he'd registered the comment and filed it away without reaction. Claire leaned back, swirling her wine. "You know what? I bet he's one of those guys who says he's focused on himself but really just can't commit to anything. Probably has a string of almosts behind him and calls it personal growth." "Claire, what?" "I'm just saying there's a difference between being selective and being unavailable. And guys who sit alone in bars reading philosophy." "It's a thriller," the man said, his voice low and even, still not looking up from the page. Claire froze mid-sentence. He turned slightly, just enough to glance at her, and she saw his face fully for the first time. He was older than she'd assumed, late 30s, maybe 40, with lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he wasn't smiling now. His expression was calm, almost amused, but there was a sharpness beneath it that told her he'd heard every word. It's a thriller, he repeated, lifting the book slightly so she could see the cover. Not philosophy, common mistake. Michelle covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. Claire felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she recovered quickly, tilting her head with a smile that was equal parts charming and defiant. Well, that changes everything. Does it? He set the book down, his attention still mostly on the page, but his tone suggested he was giving her just enough rope. Sure. Thrillers are escapism. Philosophy is pretension. At least now I know which one you are. He finally turned to face her fully, and the directness of his gaze was unexpectedly disarming. And which one am I? Claire opened her mouth, ready with a quick retort, but something about the way he asked made her pause. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't flirting. He was just waiting, like he was genuinely curious what she'd say, but her answer wouldn't change anything about him. I don't know yet, she admitted. Fair enough. He turned back to his book. The dismissal was so casual it stung more than any argument would have. Claire exchanged a glance with Michelle, who was now fully entertained, and felt the need to reclaim the moment. So what brings someone to a bar alone on a Friday night? Claire asked, her tone lighter now, probing. No plans? No people? He didn't look up. Sometimes people like quiet. Quiet's what home is for. Not always. There was something in the way he said it, no bitterness, no edge, just a simple statement of fact. That made Claire wonder what kind of home he was avoiding, or maybe she was reading too much into 2 words. Michelle nudged her under the bar. Leave the man alone. But Claire was already leaning forward, her curiosity fully engaged now. Okay, I'll bite. Why a bar? If you wanted quiet, there are 1,000 better places. He finally closed the book, marking his place with a receipt, and turned to face her fully. Because at home, my son asks me 70 questions before bed, and I love him, but sometimes a man needs 20 minutes where nobody needs anything from him. He said it without apology, without defensiveness, just honesty delivered plain. Claire blinked. Michelle's eyes went wide. The air and the space between them shifted, and Claire felt the ground tilt slightly under her assumptions. You have a son, she said, more statement than question. I do. How old? 7. Claire sat back, processing. She glanced at his left hand. No ring, no tan line. And you're single, he finished. His mom's not in the picture, hasn't been for 5 years. There it was, the piece that reframed everything. The quiet wasn't avoidance, it was survival. The ginger ale wasn't a choice, it was responsibility. And the book was probably the only thing he got to do for himself all week. Claire felt something twist in her chest, a mix of embarrassment and something softer she didn't want to name. That's a lot. It's life. He shrugged, unbothered. Good life, actually. Just a full one. Michelle was watching the exchange like it was a tennis match, her fries forgotten. Claire took a drink, buying time to recalibrate. She'd been ready to peg him as another emotionally unavailable man hiding behind excuses, but this was different. This was real, tangible, the kind of complication that didn't come with easy answers. And yet something about the ease with which he'd said it, like it wasn't a burden, just a fact, made her skeptical in a different way. Nobody was that well adjusted. Nobody carried single parenthood like it was just another Tuesday without something cracking eventually. So what do you do? She asked, shifting gears. When you're not stealing 20 minutes of peace in dive bars? He smiled for the first time, and it was small but genuine. I'm a contractor. Residential mostly. Renovations, additions, that kind of thing. Let me guess. You build tree houses on the weekends and coach Little League. Tree houses, no. Little League, yes. Of course he did. Claire laughed despite herself, shaking her head. You're like a walking Hallmark movie. If you say so. He picked up his ginger ale, taking a slow sip, completely unbothered by her assessment. I'm serious. Single dad, steady job, coaches kids, reads in bars. What's next? You rescue puppies? Already have a dog. Michelle nearly choked on her drink. Claire stared at him, caught between amusement and disbelief. You're making this up. Why would I? Because nobody's life is that wholesome. He considered that, then nodded. It's not wholesome. It's just busy. There's a difference. Is there? Yeah, wholesome sounds easy. This is work. And there it was again, that thread of honesty that made it impossible to dismiss him as a cliché. He wasn't performing goodness. He was just describing his life. And the fact that it sounded admirable wasn't something he seemed to notice or care about. Claire leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. Okay, so honest question. You're a single dad. You work full-time. You coach. You have a dog. When exactly do you have time for anything else? Like what? Like, I don't know, a life, dating, yourself. He smiled again, and this time there was something almost sad in it. You're assuming those are separate things, aren't they? Not really. My son is my life. The work, the coaching, the dog, that's all part of it. And dating, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Dating happens when it happens. I'm not out here chasing it. So you're just waiting? I'm just living. If someone fits into that, great. If not, I'm good. Claire sat back, studying him. It was a nice answer, a mature answer. The kind of thing someone said when they'd done the therapy and read the books and learned all the right things to say. But she'd heard nice answers before. She'd dated men who said all the right things and still disappeared the second real life showed up. That sounds great in theory, she said, her tone sharpening slightly. But let's be real. A woman dates a single dad, she's signing up to always come second. That's just the reality. What kind of life is that? The words came out harsher than she'd intended, but she didn't take them back. It was something she'd thought about before, something she'd seen friends go through. The cancellations, the last-minute changes, the constant negotiation around someone else's schedule, someone else's needs. Michelle shifted uncomfortably beside her. Claire, but the man, Daniel, she'd learn his name was later, just looked at her with that same steady calm. Second to what? He asked. To the kid, obviously. He nodded slowly, like he was considering it. You're right. If a woman dated me, my son would come first. But that's not the same thing as her coming second. Claire frowned. How do you figure? Because love isn't a ranking system. It's not a competition where someone wins and someone loses. My son needs me in a way that's non-negotiable. But that doesn't mean there's no room for someone else. It just means that person has to understand what they're walking into. And if they can't, then we're not a fit, and that's okay. It was such a simple answer, delivered without defensiveness or apology, and it made Claire irrationally angry. You make it sound so easy. I didn't say it was easy. I said it was clear. But it's not fair to expect someone to just accept that they'll always have to work around your kid's schedule, your commitments, your life. That's asking a lot. It is, Daniel agreed, which is why I don't ask. I just tell people the truth, and they decide if it works for them. Claire opened her mouth to argue, but the logic was airtight. He wasn't hiding anything. He wasn't making promises he couldn't keep. He was just living his life and letting people opt in or out based on reality, not potential. So you've never had someone walk away because of it? She pressed. Of course I have. His voice was even, but there was weight beneath it. More than once. And it hurt. But I'd rather that than lie about who I am or what my life looks like. Michelle was watching Daniel now with something like admiration, and Claire felt a flicker of irritation that she couldn't entirely explain. That's very evolved of you, Claire said, her tone edged with sarcasm. Daniel smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It's not evolved. It's just survival. I tried the other way. Tried to be everything to everyone. Tried to make it work by sheer force of will. It nearly broke me. So now I do it differently. And that works? Define works. You're happy. Your kid's happy. You're not, I don't know, lonely. He considered that, turning his glass in slow circles on the bar top. I'm not lonely. I'm selective. There's a difference. Sounds like the same thing with better branding. He laughed, a real one this time, low and warm. Maybe, but I sleep fine at night, and my son knows I'm there when it matters. So if that's branding, I'll take it. Claire took a long drink of her wine, trying to find the crack in his armor, the place where the performance ended and the real person started. But the more he talked, the more she realized there might not be one. He might actually be exactly what he appeared to be, a man who'd figured out his priorities and built his life around them. Consequences be damned. It was infuriating. "So what are you doing here then?" Claire asked, unable to keep the challenge out of her voice. "If your life is so full and your priorities are so clear, why are you sitting in a bar alone on a Friday night?" Daniel met her eyes, and for the first time she saw something flicker there. Not defensiveness, but something raw. "Because even people who have their shit together need a break sometimes. Because I love my son more than anything in the world, and I'd do anything for him. But that doesn't mean I don't need 20 minutes where I'm just Daniel, not Dad. Because being a good father doesn't mean erasing myself. It means knowing when I need to step away so I can show up better when it counts." The honesty of it hit her like cold water. Michelle was staring at him like he'd just recited poetry. Claire felt her defenses shift, recalibrate, search for new ground. "That's a good answer." "It's the truth." "Still a good answer." He smiled, and this time it was softer, less guarded. "You ask hard questions." "I've been told." "It's not a bad thing." "I've been told that too." They looked at each other for a long moment, the noise of the bar fading into background static. Claire felt something shift in her chest. Not attraction exactly, though there was some of that, but something deeper. Respect, maybe, or curiosity. The sense that she'd misjudged him and was only now seeing the real shape of the person sitting 3 seats away. "So," Daniel said, breaking the silence, "you never answered my question." "What question? Want to bet?" Claire blinked. "Bet what?" "You said a guy with a kid means a woman always comes second. I'm saying that's not true. So let's bet on it." She laughed, incredulous. "You want to bet on what? Whether you can make a woman happy?" "No. I want to bet on whether someone willing to actually see the whole picture, the kid, the schedule, the life, would feel like they were coming second, or whether they'd realize they were part of something bigger." "That's not a bet. That's a philosophy." "Then prove me wrong." Claire stared at him, her pulse quickening in a way that had nothing to do with the wine. "You're serious?" "Completely." Michelle was grinning now, her eyes darting between them like she was watching a play unfold in real time. Claire set down her glass, her mind racing. This was insane. She didn't even know this man. But something about the challenge, the sheer audacity of it, made her want to say yes just to see what would happen. "And what exactly would this bet entail?" she asked slowly. "You give me a chance. Not to win you over, not to prove anything. Just to show you what my life actually looks like. You see it, you decide if someone in it would feel second or seen. If I'm wrong, I'll admit it. If you're wrong, I won't be." He smiled. "Then you've got nothing to lose." Claire should have said no. Every rational part of her brain was screaming that this was a terrible idea, that she was getting pulled into something she didn't understand with a man she'd just met. But there was something about the way he looked at her, calm, certain, unbothered by whether she said yes or no, that made her want to prove him wrong almost as much as she wanted to understand why he was so sure he was right. "Fine," she said, the word out of her mouth before she could stop it. "1 month. You show me your perfect little life, and I'll show you exactly why it doesn't work for anyone who's not already in it." "Deal." He extended his hand across the bar, and Claire took it. His grip was firm, warm, calloused in a way that suggested real work, and when their eyes met over their joined hands, she felt a jolt of something she couldn't name. Michelle was practically vibrating with excitement. "This is the best thing that's happened all year." Claire pulled her hand back, her heart racing. "You're both insane." "Probably," Daniel agreed. He pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and slid it across the bar to her. "Your number, so we can coordinate our insanity." Claire hesitated, then picked up the phone and typed in her number. When she slid it back, their fingers brushed, and she felt that jolt again, stronger this time. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now I finish my book, you finish your wine, and tomorrow we figure out what this looks like." "That's it?" "That's it." He picked up the thriller, found his place, and went back to reading as if the last 10 minutes hadn't just upended both their evenings. Claire stared at him, then at Michelle, then back at him. You're really just going back to reading. I've got 3 chapters left, Daniel said without looking up. And you've got half a glass, no reason to rush. Michelle started laughing, and Claire felt her own smile breaking through despite herself. This man was either the most genuine person she'd ever met or the most skilled performer, and she had no idea which. You're infuriating, Claire said. Daniel turned a page. I've been told. And just like that, the bet was on. Claire woke up Saturday morning with a headache that had nothing to do with the wine and everything to do with the fact that she'd agreed to something profoundly stupid. She stared at her phone on the nightstand, half expecting a text from Daniel that would either confirm the whole thing had been real or prove it had been some elaborate joke she'd somehow fallen for. The text came at 8:30. Coffee? There's a place near the park on Maple. Low key. Bring your skepticism. She read it 3 times, looking for subtext, for the crack in the facade, for anything that would give her a reason to back out. But it was just an invitation, simple, direct, the same infuriating calm he'd carried in the bar. She typed back, "What time? 10 work? Fine." She set the phone down and stared at the ceiling, wondering what exactly she'd gotten herself into. This wasn't her. Claire didn't take bets with strangers. She didn't agree to month-long experiments with single fathers who seemed too well adjusted to be real. She planned things. She controlled variables. She didn't walk into chaos just to see what would happen. And yet, here she was, pulling clothes from her closet, trying to decide what you wore to prove someone wrong about their entire life philosophy. She settled on jeans and a navy sweater, casual enough to suggest she hadn't tried too hard, put together enough to maintain the upper hand. When she checked her reflection, she saw someone who looked ready for a date, and that annoyed her. This wasn't a date. This was research, reconnaissance. She was going to observe, take notes, and systematically dismantle his argument that a relationship with a single parent could be anything other than a woman perpetually accommodating someone else's life. The coffee shop was exactly the kind of place Daniel would choose. Brick walls, mismatched furniture, chalkboard menus, and the smell of fresh pastries cutting through the espresso-thick air. Claire arrived 5 minutes early, a habit she couldn't break, and found a table near the window where she could watch the door. Daniel walked in at exactly 10, and she hated that she noticed he was on time. He spotted her immediately, raised a hand in greeting, and made his way over. He wore a faded jacket over a white t-shirt, jeans that had seen real work, and boots that suggested he'd come from something practical. He looked comfortable in his own skin in a way that made Claire feel like she was wearing a costume. "You came," he said, pulling out the chair across from her. "I said I would." People say a lot of things. She couldn't argue with that. "So do we order, or is there some kind of ritual I need to know about first?" He smiled. "Just coffee. I'm not that complicated." They ordered at the counter, black coffee for him, a latte for her, and returned to the table with drinks that were too hot to sip. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable exactly, but weighted with the awareness that they were both here for a reason neither had fully articulated. "So," Claire said, wrapping her hands around her cup, "how does this work? Do you have a presentation prepared? A slideshow about why your life is so great?" "I figured we'd just talk." "About what?" "Whatever you want to know." She studied him over the rim of her cup. "That's it? I just ask questions and you answer them?" "Unless you've got a better plan." Claire took a sip, buying time. She'd expected something more structured, more defensive. But Daniel was just sitting there, waiting, like he had all the time in the world and nothing to prove. "Fine," she said. "Where's your son today?" "With my parents. They take him most Saturday mornings so I can get things done." "Things like meeting women in coffee shops?" He laughed. "Things like grocery shopping, fixing the deck, catching up on sleep. But yeah, sometimes this." "Do they know about the bet?" "No, and it's not really a bet. It's more like an experiment. Semantics." "Maybe." He took a drink, unbothered. "But you're here, so something about it interested you." Claire bristled. "I'm here because I want to prove you wrong." "Why?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean, why?" "I mean, why does it matter to you if I'm wrong? You don't know me. We met last night, So why spend a month trying to prove something to a stranger? She opened her mouth, then closed it, the answer more complicated than she wanted to admit. Because she'd seen too many friends lose themselves in relationships with men who had entire lives before they showed up. Because she'd watched people she cared about become secondary characters in someone else's story. Because the idea that it could work, that someone could build a life around a child and still have room for a partner without that partner having to shrink themselves to fit, felt like a dangerous myth that needed dismantling. Because I think you're selling a fantasy, she said finally. And I don't like fantasies. I like reality. Daniel nodded slowly. Fair enough. So what do you want to know about my reality? Everything. Start at the beginning. He leaned back, considering. The beginning's pretty standard. I met Jenna in college. We got married too young, had Ethan too fast, and spent 5 years trying to make something work that was never going to. She wanted freedom. I wanted stability. Ethan was 2 when she left, and I haven't heard from her since he turned 3. Claire blinked. She just left? Signed away her parental rights, moved to Portland, started over. Last I heard, she's married to someone else and has a whole new life. And your son knows this? He knows his mom isn't around. I've told him age-appropriate versions of the truth as he's gotten older. Right now, he knows she made a choice that was right for her and that it doesn't mean anything about him. Do you believe that? Daniel's jaw tightened slightly, the first crack in his calm. I have to, because the alternative is letting him grow up thinking he wasn't enough, and I won't let that happen. The fierceness in his voice surprised her. Not anger exactly, but something harder, a line that couldn't be crossed. That's a lot to carry, Claire said quietly. It's part of the deal. He took another drink, and when he looked at her again, the calm was back. You asked for reality. That's it. My son's mom didn't want to be a parent. I did. So here we are. And you're not angry? I was, for a long time. But anger doesn't change anything, and Ethan didn't need a dad who was bitter. He needed a dad who showed up. So that's what I focused on. Claire wanted to find the flaw in it, the place where the story didn't add up, but she couldn't. It was too plain, too honest. Do you ever regret it? Not him, but all of it? No. The answer came without hesitation. I regret how it happened. I regret that Ethan doesn't have a mom who wants to know him, but I don't regret him, and I don't regret the life we've built. Even though it's limited you? Has it? Of course it has. You said it yourself. You can't just date casually. You can't be spontaneous. You can't put yourself first. That's limiting. Daniel tilted his head, considering. Or it's clarifying. I know what I want. I know what I can offer. I'm not out here wasting anyone's time, including my own. But what about what you've lost? Like what? Claire gestured vaguely. I don't know, the freedom to just be young, to make mistakes, to figure yourself out without someone depending on you. I did that in college. It was fun. And then it was over. I'm 41, Claire. I'm not mourning my 20s. That's not what I mean. Then what do you mean? She struggled to articulate it, the sense that there was something inherently tragic about a life so consumed by responsibility that there was no room for wildness, for risk, for the kind of impulsive decisions that made you feel alive. I mean, she said slowly, don't you ever just want to do something for yourself? Something that has nothing to do with being a dad or building a life for someone else? I do things for myself all the time. Like what? I read. I work on the house. I coach because I like it, not because I have to. I meet strangers in bars and make ill-advised bets. She couldn't help but smile at that. One time. So far. They sat in the warmth of the coffee shop, the November cold pressing against the windows, and Claire felt the ground shift again under her assumptions. She'd come here expecting to find cracks, to see the weariness behind the calm, the resentment behind the sacrifice. But Daniel didn't seem weary. He seemed settled, like he'd made peace with his life in a way that didn't require her approval or understanding. Can I ask you something? Daniel said, pulling her out of her thoughts. Sure. Why are you so convinced this doesn't work? Claire took a breath. Because I've seen it not work. I've watched friends date single parents and lose themselves in the process. Everything becomes about the kid's schedule, the kid's needs, the kid's feelings. And the person who walked in thinking they mattered ends up realizing they're just there, supporting someone else's life. And you think that's inevitable? I think it's likely. Based on what you've seen? Yes. Daniel nodded. So you're making a judgment about my life based on other people's lives. I'm making a judgment based on patterns. Fair, but patterns aren't rules. No, but they're indicators. Of what? Of what's likely to happen. He smiled, but there was something sad in it. You sound like someone who's been hurt. Claire stiffened. This isn't about me, isn't it? No, it's about whether your setup works for anyone who isn't already locked into it. Locked into it, Daniel repeated the words slowly, like he was tasting them. That's an interesting way to put it. How would you put it? I'd say they chose it. Nobody's locked into anything. They see what my life looks like, and they decide if it fits with theirs. If it doesn't, they leave. If it does, they stay. That's not being locked in. That's making a choice. A choice with limited options. All choices have limited options. That's what makes them choices. Claire wanted to argue, but the logic held. She took another sip of her latte, frustrated that he kept turning her attacks into conversations. So tell me about Ethan, she said, changing tactics. What's he like? Daniel's face softened immediately, and Claire saw the real person beneath the calm for the first time. He's 7. He's smart, funny, asks a million questions, and has more energy than any human should legally have. He loves dinosaurs, hates broccoli, and thinks fart jokes are the height of comedy. Sounds like a normal kid. He is, which is the best thing I could ask for. Does he know you're doing this? You mean the bet? The experiment, whatever we're calling it. No. If it goes somewhere, he'll meet you when it makes sense. If it doesn't, there's no reason to involve him. And if I decide this doesn't work? Then we shake hands and go our separate ways, no harm done. It sounded so simple when he said it, like relationships were just transactions you could opt into or out of without consequence. But Claire knew better. People didn't walk away clean. Someone always got hurt. What if he gets attached? She asked. To you? Yes. He won't. Not unless you're around long enough for that to happen, and I don't introduce people to him unless I'm sure they're staying. How do you know when you're sure? Daniel met her eyes. I'll know. The certainty in his voice made her chest tighten. You're very confident. I've had to be. They finished their coffee in a quieter space, the conversation shifting to lighter things. Her work in marketing, his latest renovation project, the book he'd been reading at the bar. It was easy, the kind of back and forth that suggested they could be friends, if nothing else. And Claire found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't expected. When they stood to leave, Daniel walked her to her car, hands in his pockets, the cold air turning their breath to fog. So what's the verdict? He asked. Still think I'm full of it? I think you've got good answers, but answers aren't the same as reality. True. So what do you want to see next? Claire considered. Your actual life, not the coffee shop version, the real thing. All right, tomorrow's Sunday. I'm taking Ethan to the park, then we're making dinner. You're welcome to join. She hesitated. Meeting the kid felt like a line, a step that made this more real than she was ready for. Just as an observer, Daniel added, reading her face. You said you wanted to see my life. This is it. And Ethan won't think it's weird that some random woman is there? I'll tell him you're a friend. He's 7. He won't overthink it. Claire took a breath, then nodded. Fine. What time? 2. I'll text you the address. She got in her car and Daniel stepped back, giving her space to pull away. But before she did, he leaned down to the window. Hey, Claire? Yeah? Thanks for giving this a shot. I know it's weird. It's definitely weird, he smiled. See you tomorrow. She drove home with her head spinning, already second-guessing the decision. This was supposed to be an exercise in proving him wrong, not an actual thing she was participating in. But somewhere between the bar and the coffee shop, the lines had blurred, and now she was agreeing to spend a Sunday afternoon with a man and his 7-year-old son, pretending to be a friend when she was really there to collect evidence. Michelle called that night, demanding details. So? How was it? Confusing. Good confusing or bad confusing? I don't know yet. Did he try to kiss you? No, we just talked. About what? Everything. His ex, his son, why he thinks this can work. And? Claire sighed, curling up on her couch with a blanket. And he's either the most genuine person I've ever met or the best liar. Which do you think he is? I think he believes what he's saying. Whether that makes it true is another question. Michelle was quiet for a moment. You like him. I don't know him. You like him anyway. Claire didn't answer because the truth was more complicated than yes or no. She liked the idea of him. She liked the way he talked about his son, the way he didn't apologize for his life, the way he seemed unbothered by her skepticism. But liking someone and trusting that their life could make room for you were two entirely different things. I'm meeting his son tomorrow, Claire said. Michelle gasped. Already? As an observer, I asked to see his real life, and apparently this is it. Claire, that's huge. It's not huge. I'm just watching them at a park. You're meeting his kid. That's a thing. It's research. It's a date. It's not a date. Then why are you nervous? Claire pulled the blanket tighter. I'm not nervous. You're totally nervous? She was, but she wasn't going to admit it. Sunday afternoon arrived cold and bright, the kind of November day that felt like winter was testing the edges before fully committing. Claire stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes, trying to figure out what you wore to not a date with a single father and his child. She settled on black jeans, boots, and a cream-colored sweater that felt approachable without trying too hard. The park was busy when she arrived. Kids on swings, parents on benches, dogs chasing tennis balls across the grass. She spotted Daniel immediately, standing near the jungle gym with his hands cupped around his mouth, calling out to a small figure climbing to the top. You got it, buddy. One more step. Claire approached slowly, her heart beating faster than it should. When Daniel saw her, he waved, and the smile on his face was so unguarded it almost hurt to look at. You made it, he said as she reached him. Traffic was light. Ethan, come here for a sec. The boy on the jungle gym turned, and Claire got her first real look at him. Dark hair like his father's, bright eyes, a gap-toothed grin, and an energy that seemed to vibrate off him even from a distance. He scrambled down and ran over, stopping just short of crashing into Daniel's legs. This is my friend Claire, Daniel said, resting a hand on his son's shoulder. She's going to hang out with us for a bit. Cool? Ethan looked up at her, assessing. Do you like dinosaurs? Claire blinked. Sure. What's your favorite? I don't really have one. His face fell. Everybody has a favorite. Daniel laughed. Give her a break, E. She just got here. Ethan considered this, then nodded. Okay, mine's a velociraptor. They're smart and fast and they hunt in packs. Also, they have claws. He held up his hands, fingers curled into claws, and made a growling sound. That's very cool, Claire said, completely out of her depth. Do you want to see me go across the monkey bars? Sure. And just like that, he was gone, racing back toward the jungle gym with the kind of fearless speed that made Claire's chest tighten with secondhand anxiety. Daniel watched him go, then turned to her. Sorry, he's a lot. He's fine. You look terrified. I'm not terrified. You're gripping your purse like it's a life raft. She loosened her hold, embarrassed. I'm just not used to kids. He's just a kid. You'll be fine. They walked over to the bench near the monkey bars, and Claire sat down, watching Ethan swing across with the kind of reckless confidence that only 7-year-olds possessed. Daniel sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, and for a moment they just watched in comfortable silence. He's good at that, Claire said. He practices. Every week. Same park, same bars. Does he ever fall? All the time. He gets back up. There was something in the way Daniel said it, not just observation, but philosophy, that made Claire glance at him. He was watching his son with an expression she couldn't quite name. Pride, yes, but also something deeper. Love, certainly, but also vigilance, the kind of constant low-level awareness that came from being the only person standing between a child and the world. He looks like you, she said. Poor kid. She smiled despite herself. I didn't mean it that way. I know. Daniel stretched his legs out, crossing them at the ankles. He's got his mom's eyes, though, and her energy. She was always moving, Always on to the next thing. I see it in him. Does that bother you? No, it's part of who he is. I wouldn't change it even if I could. Ethan finished the monkey bars and ran over, breathless and grinning. Did you see? We saw, Daniel said. That was great. Can I go on the swings? Yeah, but stay where I can see you. Okay. He took off again, and Daniel shook his head, smiling. He never stops. How do you keep up? Badly, but I try. Claire watched the boy climb onto a swing and start pumping his legs, building momentum. Do you ever worry about him? Every second of every day. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also just part of it. You learn to live with the worry. It doesn't go away, you just get better at functioning around it. They sat there for another hour, watching Ethan play, occasionally calling out encouragement or warnings when he got too close to the edge of something. Daniel pointed out other parents he knew, told her stories about the park's history, made conversation that felt natural and easy, and slowly, Claire started to relax. When Ethan finally wore himself out, Daniel suggested they head back to the house for dinner. Claire hesitated, but Ethan was already pulling on her sleeve. Do you like spaghetti? He asked. Yeah, I do. Good. Dad makes the best sauce. He uses a secret ingredient. What's the secret ingredient? Ethan grinned. If I told you, it wouldn't be a secret. Daniel's house was a small 2-story on a quiet street lined with oak trees. The front porch had a swing, the yard had a tire hanging from a branch, and everything about it screamed stable, normal, safe. Inside, the living room was cluttered with books, toys, and evidence of a life actively being lived. There were drawings on the fridge, shoes by the door, a dog bed in the corner where a golden retriever lifted its head lazily before going back to sleep. That's Max, Daniel said. He's useless as a guard dog, but great at naps. Ethan ran straight to the dog, collapsing beside him in a tangle of limbs and fur. Claire stood in the doorway, taking it all in, the mismatched furniture, the framed photos on the walls, the sense that this was a home, not just a house. It's not much, Daniel said, suddenly self-conscious. It's nice, Claire said, and she meant it. He led her to the kitchen, where he pulled out ingredients for dinner: pasta, tomatoes, garlic, basil. Ethan wandered in and out, asking questions, showing her drawings, demanding that Daniel watch him do a handstand. The chaos of it was overwhelming and oddly comforting at the same time, like being dropped into a world that functioned on its own logic. Can I help? Claire asked. You can chop garlic if you want. She moved to the counter, taking the knife he offered, and started mincing cloves while Daniel worked on the sauce. They moved around each other easily, falling into a rhythm that felt practiced even though it wasn't. So, Daniel said, stirring the pot, what do you think so far? About what? All of this. The park, the house, the kid who won't stop talking. Claire glanced at Ethan, who was now building a fort out of couch cushions in the living room. I think it's a lot. Too much? I don't know yet. He nodded, unbothered. Fair enough. Dinner was loud, messy, and chaotic in the best way. Ethan talked non-stop about dinosaurs, school, his friend who could burp the alphabet, and whether dragons could be real if nobody had ever seen one. Daniel listened with the kind of patience that suggested he'd had this conversation 100 times and would happily have it 100 more. And Claire sat there, eating spaghetti that was actually really good, watching a life she'd never considered wanting unfold in front of her. When Ethan finally crashed, falling asleep on the couch mid-sentence, Daniel carried him upstairs, and Claire was left alone in the quiet house with the dog snoring in the corner. She looked around at the scattered toys, the half-finished drawings, the evidence of a life built entirely around another person, and felt something shift in her chest. Daniel came back down 10 minutes later, closing the door softly behind him. He's out, he said. Once he goes, he's gone. Claire nodded, suddenly unsure what to do with her hands. So, Daniel said, leaning against the doorframe. Still think this doesn't work? She looked at him, at the house, at the life he'd built with so much care and intention, and realized she didn't have an answer anymore. I don't know, Claire said finally, the words coming out quieter than she intended. Daniel pushed off the doorframe and moved into the living room, picking up scattered cushions from Ethan's fort and tossing them back onto the couch. That's honest. I'm trying to be. He glanced at her, and something in his expression softened. You want some tea? Coffee? I make terrible coffee, but the tea's decent. Tea's fine. They moved back into the kitchen, and Daniel filled the kettle while Claire sat at the small table pushed against the wall. The house had settled into the kind of quiet that only came after chaos, and she could hear the distant hum of the refrigerator, the tick of a clock somewhere upstairs, the sound of Max's tags jingling as he shifted in his sleep. He liked you, Daniel said, pulling 2 mugs from the cabinet. He barely knows me. Kids don't need much time to decide. You passed the dinosaur test. That's pretty much the bar. Claire smiled despite herself. He's a good kid. He is. Daniel poured hot water over the tea bags, the steam rising between them. He's also exhausting, stubborn, and has zero concept of personal space. But yeah, he's good. Do you ever get a break? My parents help when they can. And he's in school during the day, but mostly, no. It's just us. That sounds lonely. Daniel brought the mugs to the table and sat across from her. It's not lonely, it's just full. There's a difference. Is there? Yeah, lonely is when you want something you don't have. Full is when you've got so much of one thing there's no room for anything else. Claire wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the warmth seep into her palms. And you're okay with that? Most days. He took a sip, studying her over the rim. You keep asking me that in different ways. Are you okay with your life? Do you regret it? Are you lonely? What are you really asking? She hesitated, then decided to just say it. I'm asking if you're happy, or actually happy, not just making peace with what you have. Daniel set down his mug, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw him really consider the question instead of answering immediately. Yeah, he said finally. I am. It's not the life I planned. It's harder than I thought it would be, and some days I'm so tired I can barely think straight. But when I watch Ethan figure something out, or when he falls asleep on my shoulder, or when he tells me about his day like I'm the most important person in the world, yeah, I'm happy. But what about you? Not you as a dad. You as a person. I'm the same person. You know what I mean. He smiled, but there was something sad in it. You're asking if I miss who I was before. And the answer is sometimes. I miss sleeping past 6. I miss spontaneous plans. I miss conversations that don't involve explaining why we can't have ice cream for breakfast. But I don't miss who I was enough to want to go back. That guy didn't know what he was doing. This guy does. Claire took a drink, the tea too hot, burning her tongue. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's just clear. There's a difference. You keep saying that, clear versus simple, full versus lonely, like everything's just a matter of perspective. Isn't it? No, some things are objectively hard. I didn't say it wasn't hard. I said it was clear. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't find the angle. Everything he said made sense in a way that was infuriating because it left no room for her skepticism to land. They sat in the kitchen until their tea went lukewarm, talking about everything and nothing, her job, his work, the house he was slowly renovating one room at a time. The conversation drifted easily, no pressure, no performance, and Claire found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. When she finally checked her phone, it was past 10. I should go, she said, standing. Daniel walked her to the door, Max trailing behind them with the hopeful energy of a dog who thought any movement might lead to a walk. At the threshold, Claire turned back. Thank you for today. You don't have to thank me. You're doing me a favor, remember, proving me right. I haven't decided anything yet. I know, that's what makes it interesting. She stepped out into the cold, and Daniel leaned against the doorframe, hands in his pockets, the warm light from inside spilling out around him. Same time next week? He asked. What's next week? I don't know yet, but I'm sure Ethan will have opinions. Claire smiled. I'll think about it. Fair enough. Drive safe. She walked to her car, feeling his eyes on her until she pulled away from the curb. The drive home was quiet, her mind turning over everything she'd seen, the ease with which Daniel moved through his life, the unguarded way Ethan had accepted her presence, the sense that she'd walked into something whole and functional and didn't know where she'd fit even if she wanted to. Michelle called before Claire even made it through her front door. Well? Well, what? Did you meet the kid? I did. And? Claire kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto her couch. And he's 7 and likes dinosaurs and talks nonstop. That's it? That's all you're giving me? What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me if this is real, if he's real. Claire closed her eyes, exhaustion settling into her bones. I think he is, which makes it worse. How does that make it worse? Because it would be easier if he was lying, if there was something off, something fake, but he's just exactly who he says he is. And that's a problem because I don't know if I can do this, Michelle. His whole life is his kid. Everything revolves around this little person who needs him constantly. And yeah, it's sweet, and yeah, Daniel seems like he's got it together, but where does that leave someone who walks into it? Where do you want it to leave you? I don't know. Yes, you do. Claire opened her eyes, staring at the ceiling. I want to matter. I want to be more than just someone who fits into the gaps of someone else's life, and I don't know if that's possible here. Michelle was quiet for a long moment. Have you told him that? We barely know each other. You know each other enough to make a bet about your entire future. It's not about our future. It's about whether his setup works. Claire, come on, you like him. Just admit it. Liking him isn't the problem. Then what is? Claire didn't have an answer for that. The week that followed was strange. Daniel texted sporadically. A photo of Ethan's latest drawing, a question about whether she liked Thai food, a random observation about a book he was reading. Nothing heavy, nothing that demanded a response, just the kind of low-key contact that kept the door open without pushing her through it. Claire found herself looking forward to the messages in a way that felt dangerous. She'd catch herself checking her phone during meetings, smiling at the picture of Ethan covered in paint, feeling something warm and unfamiliar spread through her chest. On Wednesday, Daniel called instead of texting. Hey, weird question, he said when she answered. Go ahead. Ethan has a school thing on Friday, like a little showcase where the kids show their projects. It's at 7, it'll be boring as hell, but he asked if you wanted to come. Claire's heart stuttered. He asked? Yeah, apparently you're his friend now, and friends come to school things. Daniel, I don't know if that's... You can say no. I'm not trying to pressure you. I just promised him I'd ask. She could hear voices in the background, the sound of Ethan calling for his dad, the normalcy of it hitting her like a wave. What's his project about? Velociraptors, obviously. Despite everything, she laughed. Obviously. So is that a yes? It should have been a no. It should have been a firm boundary, a clear line between observing and participating, but the thought of disappointing a 7-year-old who'd decided she was his friend made her chest ache in a way she couldn't ignore. I'll be there. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, I'll text you the details. And Claire? Yeah? Thank you. Friday came too fast. Claire left work early, changed into something appropriate for an elementary school function, and drove to the address Daniel had sent. The school was exactly what she expected. Colorful murals on the walls, tiny chairs in the hallways, the smell of crayons and institutional cleaning supplies. She found the classroom easily, following the sound of children's voices and parental small talk. Daniel spotted her immediately and waved her over. He stood near the back with a cluster of other parents, looking slightly out of place in his work clothes, and when she reached him, his smile was genuinely relieved. You made it. Traffic wasn't bad. Ethan's going to be thrilled. He's been asking about you all week. Before Claire could respond, a small body crashed into her legs. You came! Ethan looked up at her with a grin so wide it made her heart hurt. Come see my project! He grabbed her hand and dragged her across the room to a table covered in poster board and plastic dinosaurs. His project was elaborate. Drawings, facts written in wobbly handwriting, a diorama featuring velociraptors hunting in a pack. This is amazing, Claire said, meaning it. I did all the research myself. Dad helped with the glue gun because I'm not allowed to use it alone yet, but I did everything else. It shows. This is really impressive. Ethan beamed, then ran off to show another parent, leaving Claire standing there with a strange tightness in her throat. Daniel appeared beside her. He worked on that for 2 weeks. It's good work. He wanted it to be perfect, said his friend was coming, and he wanted to make sure it was cool. The weight of being someone's friend, of mattering to a child who barely knew her, settled heavily on Claire's shoulders. She watched Ethan bounce from group to group, explaining his project with unbridled enthusiasm, and felt something crack open inside her. "This is a lot," she said quietly. Daniel glanced at her. "Too much?" "I don't know." They stayed for the whole showcase, watching kids present projects on everything from planets to penguins. When it was over, Ethan ran back over, high on adrenaline and praise. "Can Claire come for ice cream?" he asked Daniel. "I don't know, buddy. It's a school night." "Please? Just for a little bit?" Daniel looked at Claire, a question in his eyes. She should have said no, should have drawn the line, maintained the boundary, but Ethan was looking at her with such hope, and Daniel was giving her an out she didn't take. "Sure," she said. "Ice cream sounds good." They ended up at a small shop 2 blocks from the school, the kind of place with too many flavors and sticky tables. Ethan ordered something with gummy bears and sprinkles that looked like a nightmare, and Claire got vanilla because she couldn't handle choices after the emotional weight of the evening. "So what did you think?" Daniel asked, sitting across from her while Ethan attacked his ice cream with the focus of a surgeon. "About what?" "The showcase, his project, all of it." Claire took a bite, buying time. "I think he's a smart kid, and I think you're doing a good job with him." "That's not what I asked." She met his eyes. "What are you asking?" "I'm asking if you can see yourself in this. Not just observing, but actually being part of it." The question hung between them. Too big for an ice cream shop, too heavy for a Friday night. Ethan was oblivious, happily destroying his dessert, but Claire felt the weight of Daniel's gaze, the hope he was trying not to show. "I don't know," she said honestly. "It's not that it's bad, it's just different from anything I've ever considered." "Different bad or different unfamiliar?" "Both, neither." "I don't know, Daniel." He nodded, accepting the non-answer. "Fair enough." But it wasn't fair, and they both knew it. He was putting himself out there, showing her his whole life, and she was still holding back, still looking for the exit. They finished their ice cream in a quieter space, and when Daniel drove her back to her car at the school, Ethan was already half asleep in the back seat. "Thank you for coming," Daniel said. "Thank you for inviting me. He really does like you, you know. It's not just me pushing this." "I know." "Does that make it harder or easier?" Claire looked back at the sleeping child, then at Daniel. "Harder. Definitely harder." "Why?" "Because if this doesn't work out, I'm not just disappointing you. I'm disappointing him, and that feels worse." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "You're already thinking about it not working out." "I'm being realistic." "Or you're protecting yourself." The accuracy of it stung. "Maybe both." "Claire, I'm not asking you to have all the answers right now. I'm just asking you to keep showing up. That's it. And if I can't, then you can't. And we'll deal with it. But you don't have to decide tonight." She wanted to argue, to push back, to find the flaw in his patience. But she was tired, and he was right, and the thought of making a decision right now felt impossible. "I'll think about it," she said. "That's all I'm asking." She got out of the car, and Daniel waited until she was safely in her own vehicle before pulling away. Claire sat there for a long time, watching his taillights disappear, feeling the weight of everything she couldn't name pressing down on her chest. The following Tuesday, Claire was supposed to meet Daniel for coffee. He'd suggested a place near his work, somewhere they could talk without Ethan, and she'd agreed because she needed to figure out what she was doing before she got in any deeper. But Tuesday morning, her phone rang at 6. "Hey." Daniel's voice was strained, tired. "I have to cancel today." "Is everything okay?" "Ethan's sick, fever, stomach thing. My parents are out of town and I can't leave him." "Of course." "Don't worry about it." "I'm sorry. I know we were supposed to talk." "Daniel, it's fine. Take care of him." There was a pause, and she could hear Ethan's voice in the background, weak and miserable. "Yeah, okay. I'll text you when things settle down." "Sounds good." He hung up, and Claire sat there with her coffee, staring at her phone. It was exactly what she'd expected. Plans canceled, life interrupted, everything revolving around the kid. It was the pattern she'd seen a dozen times before, the reason she'd made the bet in the first place. But instead of vindication, all she felt was worried. She texted him an hour later. "How's he doing?" Daniel's response came 20 minutes later. "Miserable, but he'll be fine. Just one of those things." Claire stared at the message, then typed, "Do you need anything?" The response took longer this time. "We're good. Thanks, though." She should have left it there. Should have respected the boundary, let him handle it, stayed in her lane. But she kept thinking about Ethan, about his gap-toothed grin and his dinosaur enthusiasm, about how small 7 was when you were sick. Before she could talk herself out of it, she was in her car. She stopped at the store and grabbed supplies, ginger ale, crackers, popsicles, the kind of things her mom used to get when she was sick. It felt presumptuous, showing up uninvited, but she couldn't shake the image of Daniel trying to manage everything alone. When she pulled up to his house, she texted, "I'm outside. I brought supplies. You don't have to let me in. I can just leave them on the porch." Her phone rang immediately. "Claire, you didn't have to do this." "I know, but I did. So do you want the stuff or not?" She heard him laugh, exhausted and grateful. "Yeah, come in." He opened the door looking like he hadn't slept, his hair a mess, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt with a stain she didn't want to identify. But when he saw the bags in her hands, his expression softened. "You're a lifesaver." "How is he?" "Sleeping, finally. The fever broke about an hour ago." Claire followed him into the kitchen, setting the bags on the counter. "Have you slept?" "Not really, but I'll crash once I'm sure he's okay." "When was the last time you ate?" He looked at her blankly. "I don't know. Yesterday?" She started pulling things out of the bags. "Sit down. I'll make you something." "Claire, you don't have to." "Sit down." He sat, too tired to argue, and watched as she moved through his kitchen like she belonged there. She made toast, scrambled eggs, poured orange juice, and set it all in front of him with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. "Eat," she said. He did, and she sat across from him, watching the exhaustion in every line of his body, the way his hands shook slightly as he lifted the fork. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You're welcome." They sat in the silence of the morning, the house still except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Max snoring in the other room. Claire felt something shift in her chest, some piece of the wall she'd built starting to crack. "You didn't have to come," Daniel said, pushing his empty plate away. "But I'm really glad you did." "Me too." He looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw past the calm facade to the person beneath. The tiredness, the worry, the constant vigilance that came with being the only person standing between a child and the world. "This is what it looks like," he said. "The real version. Not the coffee shop conversations or the park visits. This is what you're signing up for if you stay." "I know." "Do you?" She thought about canceled plans and sick kids and sleepless nights and the kind of responsibility that never stopped. And she thought about the way Ethan had looked at her when she showed up at his school, about the way Daniel had smiled when she walked through the door, about the strange sense of rightness she felt sitting in this kitchen at 7 in the morning with a man she barely knew. "I'm starting to," she said. Before Daniel could respond, a small voice called from upstairs, "Dad?" He was on his feet immediately, the exhaustion falling away. "I'm here, buddy. You okay?" Claire followed him up the stairs, stopping at the doorway while Daniel sat on the edge of Ethan's bed. The boy looked small under the blankets, his face pale, his hair stuck to his forehead with sweat. "My stomach hurts," Ethan said. "I know, but you're doing good. The worst is over." "Is Claire here?" Daniel glanced back at her, surprised. "Yeah, she brought you some popsicles." Ethan's face brightened slightly. "Can I have one?" "Let's wait a little bit, okay? Make sure you can keep it down." "Okay." He looked past his dad to where Claire stood. "Thanks for the popsicles." "You're welcome." "Will you read to me?" Daniel started to say something, but Claire stepped forward. "What do you want to hear?" Ethan pointed to a book on his nightstand, something about dragons and knights and probably very age-appropriate violence. Claire picked it up, sat in the chair beside his bed, and started reading. Daniel watched for a moment, something unreadable crossing his face, then quietly left the room. She read for 20 minutes, her voice soft and steady, and by the time she reached the end of chapter 3, Ethan was asleep again. She set the book down carefully and found Daniel in the hallway, leaning against the wall. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I wanted to." "Why?" It was the same question he'd asked before, in different forms, and this time Claire had an answer. Because he asked, and because it mattered. Daniel looked at her, and something in his expression broke open. "Claire, don't," she said quickly. "Not yet. I'm still figuring this out. Okay?" He nodded, accepting it. "But thank you for all of it." She left an hour later, after Ethan woke up again and managed to keep down some ginger ale. Daniel walked her to the door, and at the threshold, she turned back. "Text me when he's better." "I will." "And Daniel?" "Yeah?" "You're doing a really good job. I know you don't need me to tell you that, but you are." His smile was tired but genuine. "That means more than you know." She drove home with her head spinning, the weight of what had just happened settling over her like a blanket. She'd crossed a line somewhere between the porch and the kitchen, between the eggs and the reading, and she didn't know if she could uncross it even if she wanted to. Michelle called that night, demanding details, but Claire couldn't explain it in a way that made sense. How do you tell someone that you'd spent the morning taking care of a sick kid who wasn't yours, and it had felt more right than anything you'd done in months? How do you explain that you were terrified and exhilarated in equal measure? "I think I'm in trouble," Claire said finally. "Good trouble or bad trouble?" "I don't know yet." But she was starting to suspect she did. The days that followed felt like standing at the edge of something she couldn't see clearly. Daniel texted her Wednesday afternoon with a photo of Ethan back at school, holding up a drawing of a T-Rex eating what appeared to be vegetables. The caption read, "Back to normal. Thanks again for everything." Claire stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Glad he's feeling better." Simple. Safe. The kind of response that kept distance even as everything inside her wanted to close it. But Thursday evening, her phone rang. "Hey." Daniel's voice was warm, a little hesitant. "I know this is last minute, but my parents are back in town and offered to take Ethan for the weekend. I was thinking maybe we could actually have that conversation we keep trying to have." Claire's heart kicked against her ribs. "What kind of conversation?" "The honest one. About what you're thinking, what you want, whether any of this makes sense to you." She should have made an excuse, should have bought herself more time. But she was tired of circling, tired of observing without committing, tired of pretending she didn't know what she wanted when the truth was becoming harder to ignore. "When?" "Tomorrow night. There's a restaurant on 5th, quiet place, good food. We could talk without interruptions." "Okay." "Yeah?" "Yeah." "Text me the address." She hung up and immediately called Michelle. "I need help." "With what?" "I have an actual date with Daniel tomorrow night, and I don't know what I'm doing." Michelle's shriek nearly burst her eardrum. "Finally! I thought you were going to analyze this thing to death." "I might still." "What are you going to wear?" "I don't know. That's why I'm calling you." "Come over, now. We're fixing this." An hour later, Claire stood in Michelle's bedroom surrounded by rejected outfits, while her friend pulled options from her own closet with the determination of someone on a mission. "You need to look like yourself," Michelle said, holding up a burgundy dress. "But the version of yourself that's open to possibilities. That's not a thing. It absolutely is. Here, try this." The dress fit perfectly, hitting just above the knee, sophisticated without trying too hard. Claire looked at herself in the mirror and saw someone she almost didn't recognize. Softer, somehow, less armored. "That's the one," Michelle said. "It's too much." "It's exactly right. Trust me." Claire took the dress home and hung it in her closet, staring at it like it might reveal the answers she needed. What did she want? That was the question Daniel was going to ask, and she owed him honesty even if it terrified her. The truth was, she'd stopped looking for reasons why this wouldn't work and started noticing all the ways it might. The way Daniel listened when she talked, really listened, like her words mattered. The way Ethan had accepted her into his world without question, assuming the best of her before she'd earned it. The way she'd felt sitting in that kitchen at dawn, making eggs for someone who needed her in a way that was tangible and immediate and real. But wanting something and being brave enough to reach for it were different things entirely. Friday arrived with the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on her shoulders. Claire left work early, went home, showered, put on the burgundy dress, and the heels Michelle had insisted she borrow. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw someone ready for something she couldn't name. The restaurant was exactly as Daniel described: dim lighting, exposed brick, the kind of place where conversations happened in low voices and nobody rushed you through your meal. Claire arrived first and was shown to a table near the back, away from the windows, private without being isolated. Daniel walked in 5 minutes later and stopped when he saw her. He wore dark jeans and a button-down shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and he looked at her like she'd surprised him in the best possible way. "Hi," he said, sitting across from her. "Hi. You look amazing." Heat crept up her neck. "Thank you. I mean it. I know we've been doing the casual thing, but this feels different." "It is different." "Good different?" She met his eyes. "I don't know yet." The waiter appeared with menus and water, giving them a moment to breathe. They ordered wine, made small talk about the menu, delayed the real conversation with the kind of nervous energy that came from knowing something important was about to happen. When the wine arrived and the waiter disappeared again, Daniel leaned back in his chair, studying her. "So," he said, "where's your head at?" Claire took a sip of wine, gathering her thoughts. "Honestly, I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of all of it. Of getting this wrong. Of hurting Ethan. Of losing myself in your life and waking up one day wondering where I went." Daniel nodded slowly. "Those are fair fears. But I don't think they have to be inevitable. I think they're things we'd have to navigate, sure, but not things that doom us from the start. You make it sound so manageable. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's possible." Claire set down her glass. "Daniel, I've watched people I care about disappear into relationships like this. They start out thinking they can handle it, that they're strong enough to maintain their identity while supporting someone else's whole life. And then months later, they're canceling plans, missing events, restructuring everything around someone else's schedule. And they tell themselves it's love, it's compromise, it's what you do. But from the outside, it just looks like they got erased. Is that what you think happened when you showed up Tuesday morning?" The question landed like a punch. "What? You came to my house. You brought supplies. You made me breakfast, read to my son, stayed when you didn't have to. Did that feel like you were being erased?" "That was different." "How?" "Because I chose it. Nobody asked me to do it." "Exactly." Daniel leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "That's the difference, Claire. I'm not asking you to disappear into my life. I'm asking if you want to build something alongside it. There's a huge difference between those two things." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your life is already complete. You've got Ethan, you've got your work, you've got your routine. Where do I fit in that without just becoming a supporting character?" "You think I'm complete? Aren't you?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Claire, I've spent 5 years building a life that works for my son. And yeah, it's stable and functional and good. But it's also lonely as hell. I go to bed every night knowing I did right by him, and that matters more than anything. But it doesn't mean there's no room for anything else. It just means I'm careful about who I let in, because whoever that is becomes part of his world too. And I won't do that unless I'm sure." "Sure of what?" "That they want to be there. Not because they think they should, not because they're trying to prove something, but because they actually want it." Claire felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back. "I don't know if I want it." "Yes, you do. Don't tell me what I want." "Then stop lying to yourself about it." His voice was still gentle, but there was steel underneath. "You showed up Tuesday morning. You came to Ethan's school thing. You sat in my kitchen at dawn and made me eat when I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept. Those aren't the actions of someone who's just observing. Those are the actions of someone who already cares." "Caring isn't enough." "No, it's not, but it's a start." Their food arrived, interrupting the tension. They ate in near silence, both lost in their own thoughts, the weight of the conversation pressing down on them. Claire pushed pasta around her plate, her appetite gone, her mind racing through every fear and possibility. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Always." "What happened with Ethan's mom? The real story, not the version you tell at coffee shops." Daniel set down his fork, and she saw him decide whether to answer. "We met in college. She was exciting, unpredictable, everything I wasn't. We got married because it seemed like what you did when you were in love. Had Ethan because we thought a baby would give us purpose, and for about a year we pretended it was working. And then? And then she told me she couldn't do it anymore. The marriage, the kid, the suburban life she'd never wanted in the first place. She said she felt like she was drowning, like every day she stayed was another day she lost herself. So she left. Just like that? Just like that. Signed the papers, gave up custody, moved across the country. I was angry for a long time. Not because she left me, but because she left him, because he was 2 years old and didn't understand why his mom didn't want him. That's awful. It was. But you know what the worst part was? I understood. Not her leaving him, I'll never understand that. But the feeling of losing yourself, of waking up one day and not recognizing your own life, I got that. Because I felt it too. Claire looked at him, really looked at him. But you stayed. Because I had to. Because he needed me. Because walking away would have destroyed him, and I couldn't live with that. So I figured it out. Built a life that worked, found purpose in showing up every day. And now? Now I'm not just surviving. I'm actually living. But there's a difference between building a life that works and building a life that's full. And I want full, Claire. I want someone to share it with. But not just anyone, someone who actually wants to be there. That's a lot of pressure. I know. Claire felt the tears threatening again. What if I try and I can't do it? What if I wake up 6 months from now and realize I made a mistake? Then you tell me, and we figure it out, like adults. It's not that simple. It never is. But Claire, you're so focused on all the ways this could go wrong that you're not seeing the ways it could go right. Like what? Like the fact that Ethan lights up when you walk in a room. Like the fact that you and I can talk for hours and I never get bored. Like the fact that when you showed up Tuesday morning, it didn't feel like an intrusion. It felt like coming home. The words hit her square in the chest, and she couldn't breathe around them. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. Me too." "You don't seem scared." "That's because I've already decided you're worth the risk. You're the one still deciding." They finished dinner in a quieter space, the conversation shifting to safer topics, but the weight of what had been said hung between them like fog. When the check came, Daniel paid despite Claire's protests, and they walked out into the November cold, the air sharp enough to make her gasp. "Can I drive you home?" Daniel asked. "I have my car." "I know, but I'm not ready for this night to be over." She should have said no, should have maintained the boundary, gone home, taken space to think. But she looked at him standing there in the streetlight, hands in his pockets, hope and fear written across his face, and she couldn't do it. "Okay." They walked to his truck, and he opened the door for her before climbing in the driver's side. The interior smelled like sawdust and coffee, and the seat was worn smooth from years of use. He started the engine, but didn't put it in gear, just sat there with his hands on the wheel. "I need to say something," he said. "Okay." "I'm not trying to pressure you. I know this is complicated, and I know you need time, but I also need you to know that if you decide this isn't for you, I'll understand. I'll be disappointed, but I'll understand. Because the last thing I want is for you to force yourself into something that doesn't fit just because you think you should." Claire turned to look at him. "Why are you so sure I fit?" "Because you showed up. Not just Tuesday, but all of it. You could have walked away after the bar, after the coffee shop, after meeting Ethan. But you kept showing up. And people who aren't meant to be somewhere don't do that. Maybe I'm just stubborn. Maybe. But I don't think that's all it is." He pulled out of the parking lot, and they drove through quiet streets, the city settling into its Friday night rhythm. Claire watched the lights blur past, her mind turning over everything he'd said, everything she felt, everything she was too afraid to admit. When they reached her apartment, Daniel put the truck in park but left it running. "Thank you for tonight," he said. "For what? I basically spent the whole dinner arguing with you." "For being honest. For not pretending this is simple when it's not. She unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't move to get out. Daniel, I don't know how to do this. Do what? Be the person you need me to be. He reached across the console and took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. I don't need you to be anyone but yourself. That's the whole point. What if myself isn't enough? It will be. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that she could walk into his life without losing herself, that there was room for her without her having to shrink. But the fear was louder than the hope, and she couldn't silence it no matter how hard she tried. I need time, she said. Take all the time you need. What if it's too much time? Then it is. But I'd rather you take the time and be sure than rush into something you'll regret. She looked at their joined hands, then at his face, and saw nothing but patience and understanding and a willingness to wait that she didn't deserve. I should go, she said. He squeezed her hand once before letting go. Yeah. She got out of the truck and walked to her building, turning back at the door to find him still there, watching to make sure she got inside safely. She raised a hand in a small wave, and he returned it before pulling away from the curb. Claire made it to her apartment, closed the door behind her, and collapsed on the couch. The tears came then, hard and fast, born from confusion and fear, and the terrible realization that she'd already made her choice and was just too scared to admit it. Michelle called within minutes, like she had some sixth sense for emotional crises. How did it go? I don't know. Claire. He's perfect, Michelle. He's everything I said I wanted. Honest, stable, present, and I'm terrified. Of what? Of not being enough. Of trying and failing. Of hurting him and Ethan and myself in the process. So you're just going to walk away? I don't know. Yes, you do. You're going to walk away because that's what you always do when things get real. You find the exit and you take it before anyone can leave you first. The words hit like a slap. That's not fair. It's completely fair. Marcus. Before him, that guy from work. Before him, the artist. Every time things got serious, you found a reason to bail. And you know what? This time the reason is actually valid. Single dad, complicated life, built-in responsibilities. It's the perfect excuse. It's not an excuse, it's reality. It's both. And you need to decide which one matters more. Claire wiped at her eyes, angry and hurt, and knowing Michelle was right. I don't know how to do this. Nobody does. That's the whole point. You figure it out together. What if I can't? Then you can't. But Claire, what if you can? After Michelle hung up, Claire sat in the darkness of her apartment, turning the question over in her mind. What if she could? What if she stopped looking for all the ways it would fail and started imagining the ways it could work? What if she let herself want this instead of protecting herself from it? The weekend passed in a blur of overthinking and second-guessing. Daniel texted her Saturday afternoon. Ethan wants to know if you like hot chocolate. Apparently it's important. And she responded with a simple love it that felt inadequate but safe. Sunday evening, as she was getting ready for bed, her phone buzzed with a longer message. I know you need time, and I'm trying to give you space, but I want you to know something. Tuesday morning, when you showed up at my door, I saw something I haven't seen in years. Someone who cared enough to show up even when they didn't have to. Someone who saw me struggling and didn't walk away. I've spent 5 years being the person who shows up for everyone else, and for the first time someone showed up for me. That meant everything. Whatever you decide, I want you to know that. Claire read it 3 times, her chest aching with the weight of it. She typed and deleted half a dozen responses before settling on, that meant everything to me too. It was as close to the truth as she could get without admitting she'd already fallen and was just too scared to say it. Monday morning, she went to work distracted and unfocused. Her boss called her into his office mid-afternoon. You okay? You've been off all day. I'm fine, just dealing with some personal stuff. Anything I can help with? Claire almost laughed. Not unless you have advice on single dads and emotional availability. Her boss raised an eyebrow. Actually, I might. My wife was a single mom when we met. Her daughter was 5. How did you make it work? We didn't at first. I thought I could just step into their life and everything would be great. Took me about 6 months to realize I was trying to fit into something instead of building something new with them. What changed? I stopped trying to be what I thought they needed and started being honest about what I could offer. And she did the same. We built something together instead of me just accommodating her life. And that worked? We've been married 15 years. Her daughter calls me dad. So yeah, I'd say it worked. Claire left the office with his words rattling around in her head. Build something together instead of accommodating. It sounded so simple, but the execution felt impossible. That night, she made a list. On one side, all the reasons this wouldn't work. On the other, all the reasons it might. The second column was shorter, but every item on it mattered more. She stared at the list until the words blurred, then picked up her phone. Can we talk? She texted Daniel. His response came immediately. When? Now. Can you call? Her phone rang 10 seconds later. Hey. His voice was cautious. Hey. She took a breath. I've been thinking about what you said, about building something together instead of me just fitting into your life. Okay. And I realized I've been so focused on whether there's room for me that I haven't thought about whether there's room for us. Like, not me in your life or you in mine, but something we create together. Daniel was quiet for a moment. That's exactly what I've been trying to say. I know, but I needed to figure it out myself. She paused, gathering courage. I want to try. Yeah? Yeah. I'm terrified and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I want to try. She heard him exhale, long and relieved. Thank you. For what? For being brave enough to say that. I don't feel brave. You are, anyway. They talked for another hour, making plans to see each other, establishing boundaries and expectations, being honest about fears and hopes. When they finally hung up, Claire felt lighter than she had in weeks. But Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. Daniel called while she was in a meeting, left a voicemail she didn't get until an hour later. Hey, I know we just talked, but something came up with Ethan. Can you call me when you get this? She called back immediately, her stomach tight with worry. What's wrong? He's fine, he's not hurt or anything, but his school called. Apparently he got in a fight with another kid. A fight? Ethan? I know, I'm heading there now to pick him up. I just wanted to let you know in case we need to reschedule this week. And there it was. The thing she'd been waiting for, the proof that his life would always interrupt, always take priority, always require her to adjust. Of course, she heard herself say. Go take care of him. I'm sorry, Claire. Don't be. He needs you. She hung up and sat at her desk, staring at nothing. This was it. The pattern she'd seen 100 times. The moment when real life crashed into good intentions and everything had to rearrange around the kid. She should have felt vindicated, should have felt her fears confirmed. But all she felt was worried about a 7-year-old who'd apparently punched someone and the man trying to figure out what had gone wrong. Her phone buzzed an hour later. A text from Daniel. It was about you. Her heart stopped. What? The fight. Some kid said something about you, about how my son's dad has a girlfriend and how that's weird. Ethan punched him. Claire stared at the message, not breathing. Another text. He's suspended for 2 days. We need to talk about this, all 3 of us. And there it was, the moment where she had to decide. Walk away now, before it got messier, before a 7-year-old's emotions got tangled up with adult complications. Or stay and deal with the fact that she'd already become part of something bigger than herself, whether she was ready or not. Her hands shook as she typed, When? Daniel's response came within seconds. Tonight, after dinner. Can you come over around 7? Claire looked at the message, her finger hovering over the keyboard. Every instinct screamed at her to create distance, to let Daniel handle this alone, to not get involved in something that proved exactly what she'd feared from the beginning. But beneath the fear was something stronger, the image of Ethan sitting alone somewhere, confused about why defending her had gotten him in trouble. I'll be there, she typed. The hours until 7 stretched impossibly long. Claire left work early, went home, changed 3 times before settling on jeans and a sweater that felt appropriate for whatever conversation was about to happen. She had no idea what to say to a 7-year-old who'd punched someone because of her, no roadmap for how to navigate the collision of adult complications and childhood loyalty. When she pulled up to Daniel's house, the porch light was on, but the rest of the house looked quiet. She sat in her car for a full minute, gathering courage, before finally forcing herself out and up the walkway. Daniel opened the door before she could knock. "Hey," he said, and the exhaustion in his voice was palpable. "Hey, how is he?" Confused, angry, mostly at himself for getting suspended. Daniel stepped back to let her in. "He's in his room. I told him you were coming." "And?" "And he asked if you were mad at him." Claire's chest tightened. "Of course I'm not mad at him. I know, but he's 7. His logic doesn't work like ours." She followed Daniel through the house, noting the dinner dishes still on the table, the backpack dumped by the stairs, all the small signs of a day that had gone sideways. When they reached Ethan's door, Daniel knocked softly. "Buddy, Claire's here." There was a pause, then a small voice. "Okay." Daniel opened the door, and Claire saw Ethan sitting on his bed, legs crossed, holding a stuffed dinosaur she hadn't seen before. He looked small and miserable, and when he saw her, his eyes immediately filled with tears. "I'm sorry," he said, the words tumbling out. "I didn't mean to get in trouble. But Jason said you were just pretending to like us because you felt bad for Dad, and that wasn't true, so I hit him. And I know hitting is wrong, but he was lying." Claire moved into the room without thinking, sitting on the edge of his bed. "Hey, look at me." Ethan looked up, tears streaming down his face. "I'm not mad at you," she said gently. "And I'm not pretending to like you or your dad. Okay? But Jason said Jason doesn't know anything about us. He was being mean, and you were defending someone you care about. I get that. But I still shouldn't have hit him." "No, you shouldn't have. Your dad's right about that. But I understand why you did." Ethan wiped at his face with the back of his hand. "Are you going to leave now? Because I made things complicated?" The question hit her like a freight train, and she glanced at Daniel, who stood in the doorway looking like his heart was breaking. "Why would I leave?" Claire asked. "Because that's what people do when things get hard. Mom did." And there it was. The real fear underneath everything, the wound that hadn't healed and probably never would. Claire felt something crack open in her chest, all her carefully constructed defenses crumbling in the face of this child's raw honesty. "Ethan, I'm not your mom," she said carefully. "And I can't promise that things won't ever get hard because they will, but I can promise that I'm not going to leave just because something difficult happens." "How do you know?" "Because I'm here right now. Your dad told me what happened, and I came anyway. That's how you know." Ethan looked at her with those wide, hopeful eyes, and she saw Daniel in his face, the same steadiness, the same capacity for trust even after being hurt. "Do you like my dad?" Ethan asked. Claire felt Daniel tense in the doorway, but kept her focus on Ethan. "Yeah, I do." Like him?" Despite everything, she smiled. "Yeah, like him. And you like me?" "I like you a lot, even when you punch people." That got a small laugh out of him, watery but real. "I really am sorry." "I know, and tomorrow you're going to apologize to Jason too, even if he was being a jerk, because that's what good people do." "Okay." Daniel cleared his throat from the doorway. "All right, buddy, it's getting late. Why don't you brush your teeth and get ready for bed?" Ethan nodded and slid off the bed, but before leaving the room he turned back to Claire. "Will you still come visit, even though I'm suspended?" "If your dad says it's okay, then yes." "It's okay," Daniel said quickly. Ethan grinned, the storm clouds clearing from his face, and headed to the bathroom. Claire stood, suddenly aware of how close she and Daniel were in the small room, how much had just been said without either of them speaking. "Come downstairs?" Daniel asked. She followed him to the kitchen, where he poured 2 glasses of wine without asking if she wanted one. They sat at the table, the same one where she'd made him breakfast what felt like a lifetime ago, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "I'm sorry," Daniel said finally. "I didn't want you to get pulled into this, not like this." "He was defending me. I know, and I'm proud of him for that, even though I can't tell him that. But Claire, this is what I was talking about. This is the complicated part. You're in his world now, whether we planned it that way or not." "I know. And if you're not ready for that, if this is too much too fast, I need you to tell me now. Because it's one thing for us to figure this out, but dragging him through it if you're not sure..." "Daniel?" She reached across the table and took his hand. I'm sure. He looked at her, really looked at her, searching for doubt. You said you needed time. I did need time. But somewhere between your phone call and walking through that door, I realized I'd already made the decision. I was just too scared to admit it. And now? And now I'm still scared. But I'm more scared of walking away and wondering what could have been. Daniel's grip tightened on her hand. Claire, if we do this, there's no halfway. Ethan's already attached to you. If you're in, you're really in. I know. And some days are going to be like this. Messy and complicated and not what either of us planned. I know that too. Then what changed? She thought about it, about all the moments that had led her here, the bar, the coffee shop, the park, the kitchen at dawn, the school showcase, the fight that had brought everything to a head, each one a choice she'd made, each one bringing her closer to this moment. I stopped trying to protect myself from the hard parts and started paying attention to the good ones, she said, and the good ones matter more. Daniel stood, pulling her up with him, and when he wrapped his arms around her, Claire felt something in her chest release. She buried her face in his shoulder and let herself feel it, the relief, the fear, the hope, all of it tangled together in a way that made sense because it was real. I was so sure you were going to walk away, he said into her hair. I almost did. What stopped you? Ethan asking if I was pretending. She pulled back to look at him. Because I realized I haven't been. Not for a while now. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like he was afraid she might disappear if he pushed too hard. When they broke apart, Claire rested her forehead against his. So what now? She asked. Now we figure it out, together. That simple? That complicated. They heard water running upstairs, the sound of Ethan getting ready for bed, and the normalcy of it grounded her. This was what she was choosing, not just Daniel, but all of it. The chaos and the routine, the hard conversations and the easy moments, the life that came with loving someone who came with a whole person already built into it. I should probably go, Claire said. It's a school night, or would be if he wasn't suspended. Stay for a bit. We can talk after I put him down. She nodded, and Daniel headed upstairs. Claire moved to the living room where Max lifted his head from his bed, decided she was acceptable, and went back to sleep. She sat on the couch, looking at the framed photos on the walls. Ethan at various ages, Daniel and his parents, moments of a life carefully constructed and fiercely protected. When Daniel came back down 20 minutes later, he looked lighter somehow. He wants you to read to him tomorrow, he said, sitting beside her. Yeah? Said you do the dragon voices better than I do. I didn't do voices. Apparently you did. He's very specific about these things. Claire laughed, and it felt good, the tension of the day finally breaking. I can do that. You don't have to. I want to. They sat in comfortable silence, and Claire realized this was what had been missing from every relationship she'd tried before. This sense of settling, of not having to perform or pretend, of being enough exactly as she was. Can I ask you something? Daniel said. Always. What you said upstairs to Ethan about not being his mom, did you mean that as a boundary or a clarification? Claire considered the question. Both, I think. I'm not trying to replace her, and I don't think I should, but I'm also not just some woman who's around sometimes. I don't know what that makes me yet. It makes you Claire. That's enough. Is it? For him, I mean. Yeah. Kids don't need you to have all the answers. They just need you to show up consistently. Everything else, you figure out as you go. You make it sound easy. It's not, but it's possible. She leaned against him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and they sat there watching the night settle around the house. After a while, Daniel spoke again. I never actually answered your question, you know. What question? From the restaurant, about what happened with Jenna, the real story. You don't have to tell me. I want to. He took a breath. The truth is, she didn't just wake up one day and decide to leave. It was a process. She'd been pulling away for months, maybe years, and I saw it happening, but I thought if I just tried harder, if I was enough for both of us, I could fix it. Daniel, Let me finish. I thought if I took on more, if I made her life easier, if I handled everything, she'd be happy. But that's not what she needed. She needed space I couldn't give her, and freedom I couldn't offer without neglecting our son. And eventually, she chose herself. And I was angry about it for a long time, but I'm not anymore. Why not? Because I understand now that sometimes people aren't meant to be in certain lives, and forcing it just hurts everyone. She wasn't meant to be a mother. She tried, and it almost destroyed her. Leaving was the kindest thing she could have done, for all of us. That's a really evolved way to look at it. It took a lot of therapy to get here, trust me. But my point is, I'm not looking for someone to fill her role. I'm looking for someone to build something new with. And I think that's what scared you. The idea that you'd have to fit into a space that already existed instead of creating one of your own. Claire sat up, looking at him. You've been thinking about this a lot. I've had 5 years to think about what I want if I ever did this again. And what I want is a partner, not a replacement. Someone who shows up because they want to, not because they have to. And if I mess it up, then we talk about it and fix it. That's what adults do. You keep saying that like it's simple. It's not simple, but it's possible if both people are willing to try. She kissed him then, deeper this time, with the kind of certainty that came from making a choice and committing to it. When they broke apart, Daniel smiled. So we're doing this, Fug? He asked. We're doing this. Even though it's complicated? Because it's complicated and real and worth it. They stayed up talking until nearly midnight, making plans and establishing boundaries and being honest about fears and hopes. When Claire finally left, Daniel walked her to her car, and at the door he pulled her close. Thank you, he said. For what? For being brave enough to stay. Thank you for being patient enough to let me figure it out. She drove home with the windows down despite the cold, letting the night air clear her head. When she called Michelle, her friend answered on the first ring. Tell me everything. I'm in. You're what? I'm in. I'm doing this. All of it. Michelle screamed so loud Claire had to pull the phone away from her ear. I knew it. I knew you'd figure it out. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be both. That's what makes it good. The next morning, Claire showed up at Daniel's house at 10 with coffee and bagels. Ethan answered the door in pajamas, his face lighting up when he saw her. You came! I said I would. Dad's in the shower. Do you want to see my dinosaur collection? Absolutely. She spent the next hour being educated on the difference between various carnivores, which ones hunted in packs, which ones were the fastest, and why the T-Rex was actually kind of overrated when you really thought about it. When Daniel emerged, dressed and looking significantly more rested than he had the night before, he found them on the living room floor surrounded by plastic dinosaurs, engaged in what appeared to be an elaborate battle. Who's winning? He asked. The Velociraptors, Ethan said. They always win because they're smart. Sounds about right. Daniel caught Claire's eye and smiled. After lunch, Claire read to Ethan from the Dragon Book, doing voices she hadn't known she could do, and when the boy fell asleep mid-chapter, she carefully closed the book and found Daniel in the kitchen. He's out, she said. Suspension is exhausting work. Apparently, Daniel was making coffee, and she moved beside him, fitting naturally into the space. I called the school this morning, he said. Set up a meeting for tomorrow to talk about what happened. Ethan's going to apologize to Jason, and we're going to have a conversation about managing emotions. How's he feeling about it? Nervous, but he knows it's the right thing to do. You're a good dad. I'm trying. No, Daniel, you really are. He set down the coffee pot and turned to face her. You know what's crazy? What? This feels normal. You being here, helping with Ethan, just being part of this. It doesn't feel forced or strange. It just feels right. It does, doesn't it? Is that weird? Probably, but I'll take it. They spent the rest of the afternoon in comfortable domesticity, doing dishes, folding laundry, playing with a 7-year-old who'd apparently decided Claire was now a permanent fixture and treated her accordingly. And somewhere between the lunch cleanup and the late afternoon snack, Claire realized she'd stopped looking for the exit and started looking for her place in this strange, complicated, beautiful life. When she left that evening, Ethan hugged her goodbye at the door. Will you come to my game on Saturday? He asked. You have a game? Soccer. I'm not very good, but Dad says trying is what matters. She looked at Daniel, who shrugged like it was her call. I'll be there, she said. Promise? Promise. Saturday morning arrived clear and cold, the kind of November day that felt like winter practicing its entrance. Claire showed up at the soccer field wearing layers and carrying a thermos of hot chocolate Daniel had requested via text at 6 in the morning. She found them on the sidelines, Ethan bouncing with pre-game energy while Daniel tried to keep him focused. Claire! Ethan ran over, already wearing his uniform. You came! I promised, didn't I? Yeah, but people break promises sometimes. The casual way he said it broke her heart a little. Not this one. The game was exactly what you'd expect from 7-year-olds, chaotic, enthusiastic, with only a vague understanding of the actual rules. Ethan spent most of his time running in the wrong direction or stopping to point out clouds, but when he accidentally kicked the ball near the goal and it somehow went in, his joy was incandescent. Claire cheered alongside Daniel, caught up in the moment, and when Ethan ran over after the game, sweaty and proud, she hugged him without thinking. Did you see? Did you see my goal? I saw. That was amazing. It was kind of an accident. The best goals usually are. They went for pizza after. The three of them squeezed into a booth at a loud, crowded restaurant that smelled like garlic and childhood. Ethan talked nonstop about the game, and Daniel occasionally corrected the more creative embellishments, and Claire sat there feeling like she'd stumbled into someone else's life, except it was somehow becoming hers. Can Claire come to Grandma and Grandpa's for Thanksgiving? Ethan asked suddenly. Daniel nearly choked on his water. Buddy, that's in 2 weeks. I don't know if... Why not? She's part of our family now. Claire felt her heart skip. Ethan, I don't want to impose. What's impose? It means showing up somewhere you're not invited. But I just invited you. She means invited by the adults, Daniel clarified, though he was looking at Claire with a question in his eyes. Do you want to come? Ethan pressed. Claire looked at Daniel, who gave her the smallest nod. Permission, invitation, hope, all wrapped together. Yeah, she said. I'd love to. Yes! Ethan pumped his fist, then went back to his pizza like it was settled. But later, after they dropped Ethan at his grandparents' for the evening and Daniel drove Claire back to her car, he brought it up again. You don't have to come to Thanksgiving if it's too much. Do you want me there? Yes, but I also don't want you to feel pressured. Ethan literally asked me in front of a restaurant full of people. I'm pretty sure declining would scar him for life. Daniel laughed. He does have a flair for the dramatic. I wonder where he gets that. His mother, obviously. They sat in the parking lot, neither moving to leave, the heater running to keep the cold at bay. Claire, can I ask you something? Always. Do you regret it, saying yes to this whole thing? She turned to look at him, at the vulnerability in his face, the fear that after everything she might still change her mind. No, she said firmly. I don't regret it. It's terrifying and complicated and nothing like what I planned, but I don't regret it. Good, because I'm pretty sure Ethan would stage a protest if you tried to leave now. Just Ethan? Okay, me too. I'd probably join his protest. What would the demands be? That you stay, and maybe bring more popsicles. He's very motivated by popsicles. Claire laughed, and Daniel reached across to take her hand. I'm really glad you took the bet, he said. Me too, even though I lost. Did you, though? She thought about it, about everything she'd gained in the process of trying to prove him wrong. The connection with Ethan, the relationship with Daniel, the sense of being part of something bigger than herself. No, she said. I don't think I did. Thanksgiving came with the chaos of family and the weight of new beginnings. Claire showed up at Daniel's parents' house with wine and nerves, and within 10 minutes, Ethan had dragged her off to show his grandparents his latest drawings while Daniel helped in the kitchen. His parents were warm and welcoming in the way of people who'd been waiting for their son to find someone and were just relieved it had finally happened. His mother pulled Claire aside before dinner. I'm glad you're here, she said simply. Thank you for having me. Daniel seems happy. We haven't seen him like this in a long time. He's a good man. He is, and he deserves someone who sees that. Dinner was loud and warm, full of laughter and stories and the kind of comfortable chaos that came from people who genuinely enjoyed each other. Claire sat between Daniel and Ethan, fielding questions about her work and her family and how she'd met Daniel. And through it all, she felt Daniel's hand find hers under the table, steady and sure. When Ethan fell asleep on the couch after dessert, Daniel carried him to the guest room while Claire helped clear dishes. His mother worked beside her, washing while Claire dried. "He told us about the bet," she said. Claire froze. "He did? Don't worry, we think it's charming. Daniel's father said it's the most romantic thing he's heard in years." "I'm not sure romantic is the right word." "No? What would you call it?" Claire thought about it. "Honest, terrifying, worth it." His mother smiled. "That sounds about right for love." When they finally left, well past midnight, Ethan was asleep in the back seat, and Claire sat in the passenger seat of Daniel's truck, watching the city lights blur past. "Thank you for coming," Daniel said. "Thank you for inviting me." "My mom really liked you." "How can you tell?" "She used her good china. She only does that for people she's planning to keep around." "No pressure, then?" "None at all." He pulled up to her apartment and she turned to look at the sleeping child in the back. "Should I help you get him inside?" "No, I've got it. This isn't my first rodeo." She leaned over and kissed him, soft and quick, tasting like wine and pie and promise. "I'll see you tomorrow?" she asked. "We'll be here." Claire got out and watched them drive away, and when she got inside her apartment, Michelle was waiting with wine and questions. "So? How was meeting the parents?" "Good. Really good." "And?" "And I think I might actually be doing this." "Might?" I am doing this." Michelle hugged her, tight and fierce. "I'm so proud of you." "For what?" "For being brave enough to let yourself have this." Christmas came with snow and chaos, and the kind of joy that came from watching a child experience magic. Claire helped Daniel pick out a tree, spent an evening untangling lights while Ethan provided commentary, and on Christmas morning she showed up with gifts carefully chosen: a book on marine dinosaurs for Ethan, a new set of tools for Daniel, and a sense of belonging she'd stopped questioning. When Ethan opened his gift and immediately started reading facts about underwater predators, Daniel pulled Claire aside. "I got you something too," he said. "Daniel, you didn't have to." "I wanted to." He handed her a small box, and when she opened it, she found a key. "It's to the house," he said. "You're here enough that it seemed silly for you to keep knocking, and I wanted you to know that you always have a place here, whether I'm home or not." Claire looked at the key, then at him, and felt tears prick her eyes. "This is a big step." "I know, but we're already taking it." New Year's Eve found them on his couch, Ethan asleep upstairs, watching the countdown on TV with the volume low. When midnight struck and the fireworks lit up the screen, Daniel turned to her. "So," he said, "we made it." "Made it where?" "Through the bet. It's been 3 months." "Has it?" "Yeah, which means by the original terms, you should have a verdict by now." Claire pretended to think about it. "I suppose I should." "And?" "And I think you were right." "About what?" "About all of it. About there being room for someone in your life without them coming second. About building something new instead of fitting into something old. About love being worth the complication." "So I won the bet?" "I'd say we both did." He kissed her as the fireworks continued on screen, and Claire thought about the woman who'd walked into that bar 3 months ago, so certain she knew how the world worked, so sure that love came with limits and relationships required sacrifice. She'd been wrong about all of it. Or maybe she'd been right about the sacrifice part, but wrong about what needed to be sacrificed. Not herself, not her identity, not her dreams, just the fear that had kept her from reaching for something real. In the weeks that followed, they settled into a rhythm that felt natural. Dinners at his place, weekend mornings with Ethan, quiet evenings after bedtime where they talked about everything and nothing. Claire kept her apartment but spent more nights at his house than her own. And slowly, imperceptibly, her things started migrating. A toothbrush, spare clothes, books on his nightstand. One Saturday in February, while Ethan was at a friend's birthday party, Daniel brought it up. "You know you basically live here now, right?" I have an apartment that you go to once a week to get mail. It's a very nice apartment. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying maybe it's time to make this official." Claire looked at him, at the hope and fear mixed in his expression. "Are you asking me to move in?" "I'm saying your lease is up in April, and it seems silly to renew it when you're here anyway." "That's very romantic." "I can do romantic." "Claire Morgan, will you move into this house with me and my son and our moderately useless dog?" "When you put it that way, how can I resist?" "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes." He pulled her close, and she felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. This was what she'd been afraid of. This merging of lives, this loss of independence, this point of no return. But standing in his kitchen with his arms around her, she realized she hadn't lost anything. She'd gained everything. April came with moving trucks and chaos, and Ethan's unbridled excitement at having Claire around all the time. They converted the spare room into an office for her, painted it her favorite color, filled it with her books and her desk and all the things that made it hers. "See?" Daniel said, standing in the doorway. "Room for you, not instead of us, but alongside us." "You were right about that, too." "I'm keeping track, of all the times you admit I was right. Don't get used to it." He laughed, and somewhere downstairs, Ethan called for them to come see something urgent, and they went together, hand in hand, into the beautiful chaos of their life. 6 months later, on a warm October evening, Claire found herself back at Murphy's bar for Michelle's birthday. She sat at the same stool where she'd first seen Daniel, drinking the same wine, surrounded by friends and laughter. "Can you believe it's been a year?" Michelle asked. "Since what?" "Since you made that ridiculous bet." Claire looked around the bar, remembering the woman she'd been, so certain, so defended, so sure she knew what she wanted. "I can't believe I almost walked away." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." The door opened and Daniel walked in with Ethan, who ran over immediately. "Claire, Dad said we could have ice cream after if you say yes." "Ice cream after what?" "After we ask you something." Daniel reached them, looking nervous in a way she'd never seen him. "What's going on?" Claire asked. "Ethan has a question for you." The boy looked up at her with those bright, hopeful eyes. "Will you marry my dad?" The bar went quiet, or maybe Claire just stopped hearing anything except the pounding of her own heart. She looked at Daniel, who pulled a small box from his pocket. "I was going to do this differently," he said. "Had a whole plan. But this kid has no concept of timing." "I think his timing is perfect," Claire whispered. Daniel opened the box, revealing a simple ring that caught the light. "Claire, you walked into my life determined to prove me wrong, and instead, you proved that I didn't know what I was missing. You showed up when you didn't have to, you stayed when it got hard, and you made room for yourself in a way that made everything better. I love you. Ethan loves you. Max probably loves you, though it's hard to tell with him. Will you marry us?" Claire looked at the ring, at Daniel's face, at Ethan practically vibrating with anticipation, and felt joy so complete it almost hurt. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." The bar erupted in cheers, and Ethan launched himself at her while Daniel slipped the ring on her finger. Michelle was crying. The bartender sent over champagne, and somewhere in the chaos, Claire caught Daniel's eye. "I love you," she said. "I love you too, even though you're terrible at making bets." "I won, though." "Did you?" "We both did." He kissed her while Ethan made gagging sounds, and the bar celebrated around them, and Claire thought about the bet that had started all of this. She'd been so sure Daniel was wrong, so convinced that loving someone with a child meant always coming second. But he'd been right all along. She didn't come second. She came alongside, built something new, became part of something bigger than herself without losing who she was. And that, she realized, was worth more than winning any bet. Later that night, after Ethan had been deposited at his grandparents' house and they were alone in their home, Daniel pulled her close. "You know what the best part is?" he asked. "What?" "I get to spend the rest of my life proving to you that you made the right choice." "You already have." "Then I get to keep doing it anyway." Claire looked around their home, at the scattered toys and the photos on the walls and the life they'd built together, and felt nothing but certainty. She'd taken the bet expecting to prove a point, and instead she'd found everything she'd been too afraid to want. "Hey, Daniel," she said. "Yeah? Thank you for asking want to bet." He smiled, that same calm, steady smile that had started everything. "Thank you for saying yes." And in the quiet of their home, with their future stretching bright before them, Claire finally understood what she'd been missing all along. Love wasn't about who came first or second. It was about showing up, building together, and being brave enough to let yourself be part of something bigger than yourself. She'd lost the bet, but she'd won everything that mattered.